Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another session of the Delphi Economic Forum. The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically, rapidly changed the way we live, we conduct ourselves, but not only how we conduct ourselves, but also how we conduct our payments, how we behave in the financial field. It seems that everything is different comparing to 2 years ago, and it's also interesting to see how different it will be in the coming years. To discuss this, I can imagine of little more experts than Charlotte Hogg, the Visa CEO for Europe. Ms. Hogg, Charlotte, thank you very much for joining us at the Delphi Economic Forum. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I only wish I was with you in person.
We would also hope that as well. So starting our discussion, what has Visa seen when it comes to consumer spending trends over the past months, over the past year, and how are people now choosing to pay in this COVID pandemic time that we are all embracing?
So first, I think I should recognize that for many people, the pandemic is still very much a live issue. And while we'll get on to talk about the tremendous changes we've seen in our daily lives, we need to continue to recognize the very human tragedy that's still taking place. That said, let me talk a little bit about how consumers have changed. And I think we all feel it in our daily lives. And the big theme for consumers is this shift to digital. And it's happening at sort of multiple levels. So, at one level, of course, we're more and more using contactless across Europe. In fact, Greece was one of the first to raise the contactless limits going into the pandemic. And we've now seen over 1 billion transactions in those new limits. So this adoption of contactless, touch-free way to pay has been a big thematic. Equally, and perhaps more importantly, we've seen a real shift into e-commerce. And again, just to give you some sense of the scale of that, at this point, 14 of the countries we look at across Europe have seen a 20% or more increase in e-commerce. In Greece alone, we've seen a doubling of e-commerce transactions over the past year. And consumers who've never used e-commerce before are moving into e-commerce, and you're now seeing really the vast majority of many populations embracing e-commerce and using it more and more in their daily lives. And I think that development, which is perhaps an acceleration of the pace of change, not just a discontinuity, is going to have some pretty profound effects, some of which, of course, will be quite positive, and we should think those through. The one I think that is worth recognizing is that the resulting impact it's had on businesses. So where probably a year ago, businesses were not plan A in terms of digital and moving as rapidly as they could into a digital environment, now it's really very much their plan A, and you can see that in terms of spend. So the impact of restrictions as they've come and gone across Europe has been more muted as we've gone through it. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that businesses have really changed. And interestingly, the Visa Economic Empowerment Institute has done a survey across 5 countries in the world of small businesses. And the big theme that comes out is the importance of digital payments. And in particular, the fact that they feel that their businesses has been more sustainable, more likely to thrive as a result of adopting digital payments. So what started as a consumer trend is now moving into a business trend and having some pretty profound impacts on the economy to make it more resilient. Arguably as well, this digital perhaps makes economies more responsive. So I know we're thinking very much, and we were just talking about it of the summer and comparing the wonderful temperature and weather you have in Greece with what we're facing right now and the desire of people to travel over the summer. And what we're really seeing is that as restrictions lift, you start to see travel bookings pick up. Now, we're still at a very, very early stage, but certainly in terms of travel bookings from the UK, Greece is very much on people's agenda, not just my daughter's.
No, that's very optimistic to think that we might be welcoming more tourists from the United Kingdom in the coming months. But since you are describing a trend which has grown from a consumer to a business trend, and it's now an economic reality, do you think that this new digital environment is here to stay, despite the fact that restrictions will go down in the coming weeks and months?
I do. And one of the ways to think about it is perhaps, I think it's the sort of psychometric say, how long does it take to form a habit and how long does it take to make it permanent? I think it's 21 days to form a habit and 90 days to make it permanent. Well, we're obviously a long way past that point. And I think people have been finding the convenience of shopping online, of using e-commerce solutions, finding, in fact, that the fraud implications have been minimal. In fact, we've been very pleased to see that with the lift in the contactless limits, we've seen really no increase in fraud. And really feeling comfortable in this new digital world. So I do think it's here to stay. And importantly, we see a lot of innovation in this space. So, one of the sort of untold stories, I think, of the pandemic is how many players are really enabling small businesses to take digital payments and move online. And I know in an economy which is, I think, 97% small business in Greece, this is a vitally important part of any recovery. So this has been a big theme for us. And in June of last year, watching the trends, we made a commitment to support the digitization of 50 million small businesses globally, 8 million in Europe. And we've already reached a target of 2 million across Europe. And we're very active in Greece as well. So there's a whole series of initiatives, including contactless and including a support for shopping locally and shopping digitally in Greece. So these solutions really do
more specifically. Let me come to this more specifically, because even for you, even for providers, this was a big change what happened with the pandemic. And explain us more concretely what you did in terms of practices, but also in terms of security. I want to combine those two elements because in my mind they go along, both on a European-wide level, but also in Greece.
So in terms of the enablement of digital, firstly, of course, it's working with the whole ecosystem to allow for the contactless payments at the higher European limit. That's taken banks, it's taken financial services firms across Europe to raise those limits. It also takes us continuing to use the very advanced fraud detection skills that we have. So every time you make a contactless payment, we're going to be checking multiple variables around the world in milliseconds to protect consumers against fraud. And that's a very effective way of doing it. So on the security side, as I say, you see really quite low levels of fraud. And if anything, they've dropped in the contactless environment over this period. So I think, consumers are increasingly feeling confident with that. And again, if you start to imagine what this last year might have been like without the ability to use digital payments and how much we have trusted those, then you can understand the amount of work that goes into delivering on that trust day in, day out by the kind of teams we have around the world on the technology and cybersecurity side.
Yeah, would you consider it feasible that we discuss in the coming weeks, in the coming months practically, a potential raise of the contactless limit on a European level?
I mean, we would actively support that. We've seen much higher limits around the world, in Singapore, in Australia, and the UK has announced they're going to move to a £100 limit later on this year. We think that the limit should be at the level that you can do your everyday spend. We believe that consumers can be protected at this level. We know they want to be able to still shop in an environment where they don't touch anything. And that's true in all sorts of environments. It's in the supermarket, it's in transit, it's when they go back to restaurants and bars. Typically, you'll find that people do spend above the limit if they're taking their family out for dinner, and nice if they don't have to touch anything in that environment as they come back into the restaurants.
Is this, in terms of security, is this safe?
As I said, yes. We work very hard on protecting consumers against fraud, and certainly the experiences in Singapore, in Australia, in Canada suggests that you can raise these limits. And in fact, our experience in Europe is we did raise these limits and didn't see any increase in fraud.
All right. Let's come a bit to the future of payments, because we are in a new world is ahead of us. So do you feel that the use of debit of credit cards will still be the most prominent form of e-payment in the coming years, or are we looking, for instance, at crypto assets, at stable coins, at central bank digital currencies, which could play a role in the everyday life of citizens? And are they practical?
What I like to think about is in Europe, we have an incredibly competitive market for payments and a sort of a burgeoning of innovation. And that's a fabulous place to be. That said, I think one has to stay grounded in the sort of the 3 or 4 different levels of what a payment system does deliver. And I think consumers are going to want it to continue to deliver. So at the base of it all, and we've talked about it, is this commitment, sort of unremitting commitment to resilience, operational resilience, cybersecurity, fraud prevention, consumer protection. We all have enormous trust, implicit trust in our payment systems, and any payment system has to abide by, I think, a very high hurdle to deliver on that trust. We have close to 1,000 people worldwide working on cybersecurity. We use global data to protect against fraud, because fraud never stops at a national boundary. And we work very hard towards a 5 nines level of resilience, which is better translated, I think, into less than 32 seconds of outage. So this is base for any system. And I think we should never lose sight of that. The next level, I think, is around competition, because I do believe that open systems and competitive systems best encourage innovation. And the way that we operate is to make clear what our standards are and what's required to join our network. But then we welcome all of those who fulfill that with open arms. So interestingly, for example, 2 years ago, we really thought about what it would take to encourage more fintech onto our network and changed our approach. Since then, we've had over 200 fintechs join the network, all offering very different solutions to consumers and businesses. And we've seen that in Greece as well with some of the support we give to fintech. So I think this openness, this transparency about standards is critical to create new consumer experiences that many of us probably couldn't even dream of. And then lastly, of course, you have to think about the other services that consumers need. When I book a holiday, the importance of being able to know that I'm going to get my money back if something goes wrong. That's the promise of the card schemes. That may be different from other types of transactions. So I think you have to ground in those basic levels even before you start talking about this crypto world, which I'm happy to get onto.
All right. And with practically 2 minutes left in our discussion, I would like to touch upon a topic of local interest, let's say. You met with Prime Minister Mitsotakis in the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2020, when those kinds of fora were held in physical presence. What do you think about the financial environment in Greece and about the prospects of doing business in Greece? Are you potentially looking to expand your activity even further than you actually are having them right now?
I mean, I think we've been enormously impressed with the way that Greece has navigated through the past year, particularly. This embracing of a digital environment. We're working closely on the Athens project as well as an example for that. And I think we have, enormous respect for the work you're doing and continue to want to support that. It seems a very far-sighted agenda and very much in line with the overall EU agenda around digital. In terms of tourism, it's why I mentioned it earlier. I do think that as restrictions are lifted and as people feel that their own self-imposed restrictions are lifted, we will see travel bookings pick up. And I think given that consumers already seem to be within Europe making bookings in places like Greece, then as restrictions lift and as it becomes possible to travel, I would hope we might see something more of a summer.
I hope this optimistic message actually materializes. Charlotte, thank you very much for your time. I wish you all the best in a very challenging environment, and all the best to Visa Europe as well.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. Please stay tuned for more discussions in the Delphi Economic Forum.